I need all the wins, yeah. Ain't no L's, I gotta get it, no call it quits, yeah. Gotta keep on moving no matter how hard.
Here comes Danny Tucci-Zala, back to Baker, Baker with the fin. Kurt Baker in for DC, and this may well do it Old Glory with the try. The New Zealand Sevens legend, Kurt Baker with the cherry on top.
Can you believe it?
Hello and welcome back to the On the Line Rugby podcast, a show brought to you by the Believe Sports Network. I'm your host, Micah Nagaishi, and welcome back to all my Americans. Happy belated Labor Day weekend. Hopefully y'all got blasted. I sure as heck didn't, but you know, we digress and we move on. The Rugby World Cup starts this Friday. You know, a lot of big matches, specifically France versus the All Blacks. You got Scotland versus South Africa, Fiji versus Wales, and Argentina versus England for all you Pacific Islander fans. Let's go up the boys, and we'll see what happens. But I think the biggest point of intrigue right now, obviously due to the branding and the favoritism for this year, would be France versus the All Blacks, and you know what they're leaving on the table and what's giving the All Blacks hope. Specifically, the injury department. You know, you already had Romain Ntamack ruled out. They seem to be doing fine without him, with Matthew Jalibert and Matthew Jaminet, but you know the rest of their lineup is really messed up, at least for the opening match. Jonathan Dante has been ruled out, Cyril Bile has been ruled out, and Paul Williams has been ruled out. And that's just for the opening. We don't even know the extent of their injuries as of this recording to see whether or not they'll last for the rest of the World Cup. Hopefully they'll be back. I think France will still be heavily favored just because it's the host nation, and the host nation really never disappoints. But I think injuries might limit or tamper with that expectation of a breakout win. Do I think the All Blacks could win? I think certainly if they roll out a good enough lineup and definitely put Will Jordan in his proper position. I can't say that enough. He is a fullback, not a wing. Stop putting Beauden Barrett back there. Put him back at 10. Let him do damage. Put Richie Mo'unga on the bench and just please let them stop playing with talent and just put them in their proper spots. But I think a good benchmark for that would have to be France's demolition of Australia. Now, is a lot of it going to go down to Australia's lack of discipline and ability to counter, really hurting themselves at the breakdown with side entries? We had a bunch of offsides, just trying to do too much. A big play would have to be looked at was, I thought Andrew Callaway was really the weakest link on the day from that fashion, outside of Carter Gordon's misses from the tee. They left a lot of points on the board, directly so. They could have had 2 tries off of Callaway. Both of them were forward and knocked on. Both of which specifically, I believe it was in the 60th minute, if I'm recalling correctly. Callaway has an open gash. They have the sideline open. He's on the bottom of your screen. You're going to watch the playback. Nani Tawase looks to be ready. He passes it to Karevi. Karevi sees this, throws it out to Callaway. Callaway has it with both hands. And, you know, as we say in the game, you can't drop the ball if it hits both hands. Like, come on, guys. Like, we're in the professional test level. Callaway is not no slouch. He's been there before. He's done it at a high level. Maybe it was just too much of the bright lights. Same thing with Carter Gordon. I don't know, but he dropped both that and another play prior that would have put them over the top at the time. Obviously, you know, entering and leaving points on the table, especially towards the end and at the halves, is going to be crucial. You know, it shaves momentum. It moves the team up in morale. And it could have been a different game. But unfortunately, you know, as we all saw, for those of you who have watched, France just put a demolition on them with Villiers and the boys just dunking on them. I think that's a reflection of Eddie Jones's lack of putting in a player at 10 to help Carter Gordon out. I mean, they do have Ben Donaldson, but I don't think that's a really experienced option. I still think, I will die on this hill, they should have brought in Brad Wilkin, and they should have brought James O'Connor. Like, come on. Please bring JOC back. I think he deserved it. He worked hard all year. They still have time. Well, actually not anymore, but we had hopes and dreams of that happening. Hopefully he'll get called up if someone gets hurt. Knock on wood, someone doesn't, but it would be nice to see him play in the World Cup stage. But given what we saw in that game out of France, I think they still have their open play standard. I am a little worried about Antoine Dupont. He did take up an injury in that game. Now he did have a defined limp for, I want to say, the next 10 to 15 minutes afterwards. It happened right at the beginning of the second half of the match, but he did play the rest of the way. I think he will try to suck it up, as he is, as of right now, the de facto leader and kind of Jesus figure, if you will, for France's team. Do I think it could hamper him down the long run? I don't think that they explained the extent of the injury. It looked as if it was a Achilles type of injury close to the lower leg. I'm not sure if it was an ankle, but there isn't really no good replacement for him in terms of someone that can match that ability, that dynamo, if you will, to push the team forward. Yeah, you have, your traditional captains like Gregory Aldred. You have Jalabert, the human energizer bunny, as we like to call him back there. But it's not the same as having the world player of the year at your 9 spot, ready to either distribute the ball or take it himself. That guy is a game changer, just like Sia Kolisi for South Africa, just like a Will Jordan would be for New Zealand. When he's on the field, things happen. Tries are scored, players are up, everyone's moving. You got to have him out there, and I hope he doesn't get re-aggravate or further that injury, but that could be a position to watch off of just the cuff. In terms of the All Blacks expectations for that game, I expect them to lose by about 8.5, a try and some change, but I think that they have to come into this game hungry. They've been running at Bull before the South Africa game. They were riding an 11-game undefeated streak. And obviously, the Springboks, as I talked about last week, took that apart and shoved it up where the sun don't shine. But they have a chance to come in hungry and reestablish that dominance. They're going to see the lack of depth on the French side. They play actually very similar games if we just look at from their most recent performances together. That they really like to play the open play. They're both very turnover dominant when it comes to just punishing people off the cuff, and they're both devastating off the tee when they need to be. But I think France will be looking, obviously, to score more tries. You're going to want to stop that open play that the All Blacks traditionally have done and will continue to do. I think that their game plan in that game would be to slow them down, almost play a South African level of possession. Keep in mind, it's kind of what they did versus the Springboks in the Rugby Championship. And to their benefit, actually pulled it off very well. They played a slower game, very physical. Your standard 2 phases, box kick it out, keep the ball moving forward, keep the pressure on the opponent at all times, and that seemed to work out. And for a ball possession team like France can be, with their subterfuge method of punishing the ball with their forward runners and then keeping it out wide, that might be also a counter for that as well, and could keep the All Blacks in contention. Do I think they could win the game, though? I really don't think so, but if they get a couple good rolls their way, France become undisciplined, Dupont goes down, hopefully not though, or another emergency type of situation happens with the French team, you could see the All Blacks vault over them in the opening stages. But that is a game to watch, and either way, it's going to be good footy for us, as viewers. It's not 2 of the most recognizable teams in the world. You have the host nation, who's been a up-and-coming riser with young, breakneck talents. You have the All Blacks, who have traditionally always been, the biggest brand in rugby next to the Springboks. The patented hawk, the haka, the pageantry of their open field play. All of that just sums it up perfectly, and they're a great team to watch no matter what. Win or lose, you're going to see a great performance from them or the opponent, really. So that's going to be a good game. A couple other upsets I think we could be looking at this week that are almost, I don't want to say guaranteed, and if you're a betting man, you bet and you lose, I am so sorry, but I would say that the biggest games you should really look out for is Fiji versus Wales and Argentina versus England. Now, I think both games could be upsets on major levels. When you look at a Fiji team who's just upset England in one of the worst losses in history, they play hungry. We've seen the Drua. Most of them are actually Drua alums or players from Bristol and parts of the top 14 in France. But you're going to see that obviously the Fijian flair, everyone knows about it. Everyone loves it. You could argue they're probably most people's second or third team to watch on the international stage, especially in sevens. For all of you Jerry Tuvai fans, I got you. They got tons of boys in that lineup. We'll talk some more about some of their sleepers, but I mean, do I really have to name all of them? I mean, you got one of the best centers in the world, Semi Radradra. You got Kelaveti Ravovo, who just took in his spot at Bristol. Another filthy guy who can play center. He can play outside back. He's played fullback. He has blown away everyone's expectations of him at the Super Rugby level. That guy dismantled the Crusaders single-handedly. You have his teammate at center, his 13, Iosefo Masi. We'll talk more about him later in the show, but there's tons and tons of talent on that roster, not even just in the backs, but in the forwards. You have Tevita Nkanavere. He was the captain for the Drua during the Super Rugby season, and he was a massive threat. You can pass almost like a Tog Furlong. He'll run through you like a standard Fijian will, and his scrums and lineups are by far one of the best of an Islander team that he brings to the table. He is, I guess you could compare him at a higher level to like a Samasoni Tokiaho, who if you feed him the ball, he'll run amok. Line-out wise, he's just as effective, if not better. They will be a threat. I think Warren Gatland has a team of mixture of too much of the older crowd. You have Leigh Halfpenny, who's had his problems with injury. A lot of the team, they did cull through for bad decisions, just like how Steve Borthwick did with England. We'll talk about them also later. But they are just a team who I could easily see getting a pool stage exit. I think Fiji could easily become a quarterfinalist contender and hopefully semi-final, team to look for down the stretch. I don't think they'll win the World Cup this year, but it would be nice. And I think they'll be the Japan of sorts to push their team forward. I think a lot of people are looking at Tonga and Samoa to be that group. I really don't. I think that they will be an upset team. I think they'll make a lot of improvements. Like, for example, having Charles Piutau on that roster. I mean, you did have Israel Folau. For whatever reason, he bowed out. I'm not sure what happened with that. I'll do some research. We'll come up with something on Friday, hopefully. But you had a lot of guys, internationals, Benta Maifuna, Miracle Faingalagi. Pardon if I'm butchering all the names. But there's a lot of guys, especially from the international level, former All Blacks, Via Fifita, everyone across the board who would have played for New Zealand and Australia is coming back to their home country to play. And they'll make improvements. I don't see them getting a quarterfinal, but I think it all stems from that Super Rugby introduction level that they did a couple years ago to bring in Moana Pacifica, to bring in the Fijian Jura, and now to bring in the Japanese top league. And speaking of the Japanese, they will, I don't think, be the same team that we saw in 2019. Unfortunately, we're going to talk about them later in the show, but they're just not it anymore for whatever reason. And it's kind of disappointing as a Japanese fan myself. But yeah, just sadness all across the board. Argentina versus England, though, I think that will be the game of the weekend. I think Argentina will stomp on England. Need I say less? The Pumas are the physical, mighty team in that competition. You have, the likes of Pablo Matera. You have Thomas Kubeli. You have your Emiliano Boffelli. All those boys, they bring it. They're physical at the breakdown. They'll punish you on turnover. Hell, against the All Blacks, arguably a team who could have killed England if they played them. in the summer series, they had their moments. They still have their number. I mean, they've blocked kicks on the try line. Obviously, their power at the breakdown is nothing to mess with. Their set piece has been immaculate, thanks to new Sale Shark signing, former London Irish. You have Augustin Creevy, and you have the big boys in that group. You obviously have the captain, Pablo Matera. Nasty, nasty group. Steve Borthwick and England are not ready to face that team. They will go down in fantastic, fantastic fashion. I think England will have a pool stage exit. They will not be happy. Borthwick probably will get canned. A lot of people will blame and say that Eddie Jones was the problem with that team. I don't even think Borthwick could fix that team. Not even Eddie could fix the problems with England. For whatever reason, the Premiership has been having a lot of problems lately. I myself am a still Sharks fan who have had their own disappointments in my book tons of times. But to be an England fan right now is probably one of the worst things to be. And it's not going to be a good day for any of you guys to watch any pool stage match. If you guys make it past that, hey, by all means, hats off to you, but don't expect any great things from your English side. As for some sleepers, as we talked about, I think there's 3 that we really need to look into as futures for not only their provincial sides, but in their debut on the world stage. You have Iosefo Masi, a person who I particularly like because he saved my fantasy league. Thank you, Super Brew. He's had a huge impact on the game at the provincial level. I expect him to be there at the international stage. I'm not sure if he had any impact in the England game. I did miss the first, I think, half hour of that match versus England. Maybe he did before. Afterwards, he just kind of faded out of my mind as I was just kind of enjoying the upset. But Masi brings a lot of things to the table. His ability to distribute out wide, obviously the Fijian flair, the full of offloads, the fancy passes, skips, the whole 9. He has that. But I think what he has is something, the same thing as Vinaya Habosi has already had. He'll be another sleeper to be on the field, is just pure speed. Well, Habosi's obviously on the wing and is going to be a nightmare to try to cover for any wing. To have someone like Iosefo Masi, almost like a Rico Ioane at the 13 spot, who's that fast, is going to be a nightmare to stop. He has been good on defense, at least at the provincial level. Every Drew game I've watched, he's always around the breakdown. Him and Ravovo sniff the ball. They are constantly being fed from it. They're usually during the first or second phase. They'll crash it. They love to offload. Their ability together is what's going to set them apart. Now, especially add in Semi Radradra to that roster, it's going to be a night and day problem for any team, especially Wales, to stop that center pairing. I love the way the Drua play. I will love the way the Flying Fijians play. They will be a problem no matter who they face, and I'm excited to watch them. Similar center we're talking about from South Africa. A lot of you guys know him from the Bulls. He's made an impact at the international level, specifically in the dismantling of the All Blacks. Kanan Moody, you could argue him and Arnsa could have been the co-MVP. I will die on that hill as well. They should have been the co-MVP of that game. They're always, just like Iosefo Masi, always run the ball. For some reason, they just have a knack for sniffing a play out and stopping it. A lot of people had problems with Kanan Moody coming to the next level, to that international stage, taking that center spot. You could argue the pairing of him and Andre Esterhazen is so dynamic and so just unstoppable. They might be able to assert the combo of Damon De Allende and Jesse Creel, who won the World Cup, obviously, in 2019. I think their athletic ability to not only move the ball with power, but their ability to force turnovers, to extend plays and make tackles, it cannot be understated. Kanan Moody showed up on an international stage and showed the world what he could be at that 13 spot. And, honestly, everyone knows his efficient running ability, his kicking, his chipping skills. But when it comes down to it, defense wins championships, and his ability to force turnovers on the side of the ball has been South Africa's godsend. Him and Kurtley Arendse will be the center back pair, I think, of the tournament, should the South Africans go far. Another team and player that you should really look into is Rodrigo Marta. Up the Portuguese, man, what can I say? I've only watched one game of his. It was the USA versus Portugal match. Obviously, they got beat down. And Rodrigo Marta obviously was a big part of that. His ability to just, it's a highlight of all my sleepers. They're always around the ball. His beautiful chip kick to himself to score, I think, was my highlight of the tournament, of that game, specifically of the USA European Tour. But just his raw ability to just speed through a defense, take the corner, and just keep running amok. He gets into people's heads. His celebrations, I think, are the best thing out there. Man, that guy is something else. For a young kid, I think he'll be the future of Portuguese rugby's, international stage, and hopefully he'll make a little jump to the MLR. I would love to see him in a Miami jersey, or hell, even maybe let's see, who else could probably take him. I could see a Chicago taking him. That would be a nice addition out wide. And I think he'll make a killing there. I think he plays for the Portuguese provincial league, but yes, Portugal will never really make it, but man, that kid is something special. I hope you guys watch him. Go look up some highlights. Enjoy it. Marta is amazing. I didn't really get to look at his defensive skills in the match, but just, on the offense, he's a pure threat with ball in hand. You can't really discount him from taking the ball in, or him distributing the ball out to someone who will take it in. As a 14, that's more than what I could ask for as a coach, and I'm excited to see what Portugal can do, at least on the pool stage level. I think that it's opening. It's opening weekend. Come on, guys. We have to talk about a way too early preview. This may age like fine wine. This may age like, some leftover trash in the trash can. Who knows? What kind of juices will come out of this? I don't know. But let's find out as it goes on. I think some way too early predictions would be that the Ireland curse, unfortunately, will continue. As much as that would benefit me as a South African fan to see them lose in a quarterfinal exit, as they've always done, they haven't really been known to blow past that stage. I think it's kind of a superstition around the league in general, and they are my Six Nations side, but that pool of death is just too good. Scotland has a lot of things to say. They have some unfinished business and a lot of things to answer with Stuart Hogg retiring. How they're going to answer that at the fullback spot, will be something to look into. But South Africa's coming hungry. They might, hopefully reclaim their spot on the crown. Ireland and France, obviously, as the World Cup favorites, have a lot to prove. They're going to have a target on their back. They definitely still have a stacked side. I think that they'll go far, but I think they're one thing to look into because of really, superstitions happen. Knock on wood, ball don't lie. Things may come down to it. Yes, they'll probably make it to the quarterfinal. I hope so. Do I think that they'll make it past it? Probably not. France as a whole, we talked about this already. I don't think that they'll win it. Highest ceiling I got for them is a semifinal exit. It is what it is. Will South Africa see a pool stage exit is one that I originally predicted going into this tournament before the summer series. As a South African fan, that did hurt. They do have a lack of depth, specifically obviously at the center spot, that they haven't really filled. They kind of did with Kurtley Arendse, but as I wouldn't say it's a quality addition in terms of like defined depth. You're taking away your spot on your backside to fill in that spot. They should have brought in more talent and help on that department. You obviously have a lot of older boys. You have your Sia Khaleesi's, who is like Jesus down there. Speaking of that, I'm not sure if I talked about this before, but excuse me. He's not human. Okay. And I mean this in the nicest way possible. The dude is not human. How do you recover from an ACL injury in 4 months, show up on the international stage in 2 games, and wipe the floor with your opponent? For those of you who are NFL fans, that's like Adrian Peterson level numbers. I've never seen that before. And Adrian Peterson still took, I believe it was 6 months to recover, but 4. Let that sink in. 4. Something to look out for. I think that they'll also, I hope they'll win. I'm not sure. I would like to see them at least make it to the semifinal. Do I think they'll make it to the final? I think we'll have to wait to shake it out. I'm not sure who will be their semifinal opponent, but that would be an interesting matchup if they do regardless. Will the islands see the quarterfinals? I think like I said before, I think Fiji will probably be their best bet in terms of making that. Fiji will probably be the best bet at making that spot, but I think the one team that will probably make it farthest of the two between Samoa and Tonga is Tonga. In comparison to Samoa, Tonga is probably going to be the top player in that quarterfinal contention category for the second spot for the islands. I definitely think that Samoa has a lot to bring to the table in terms of what they can do. They have Christian Leali'ifano, they have Miracle Faingalagi, they have all those boys, but I think Tonga just has more juice. I think they bring a lot more players to the table. They have, while Samoa has like a Jordan Taufua, you can never deny Charles Piutau. You can never deny Ben Tamaifuna. Via Fifita, that team is just too loaded. They will be the upset team. I think they will be that Japan team next to Fiji of the tournament. If they make it to a semifinal, that's great for them. I definitely think Fiji will outscore them to that spot, but we can see what will happen from there. And I think the biggest question to ask in this way too early preview is the future. What will be the future of Japan? For those of you who don't know, Jamie Joseph is leaving Japan after this World Cup. He will be taking over the director of rugby position for the Highlanders in Super Rugby. I think that's a great return for him. I've always lobbied for him, at least in the personal standpoint, to return to the Highlanders. I think they were a better team with him around. They seem to be kind of meandering, with the additions of Aaron Major and a couple. I think Brad Moore coached that team at one point. I'm not really a Highlanders fan, so pardon me if I don't follow, but I think he'll bring back a sense of consistency, bring back that culture of winning, specifically because he was among the staff that won Super Rugby. I believe it was in 2013, 2011, with that Highlander side. They can be a good team again. Forsyth Barr, in my 6-7 years of watching rugby, has been, at least at one point, was a hostile environment. The zoo is amazing. I definitely want to go there on my bucket list as a stadium, tour. It would be a great game to watch, no matter what you're doing, provincial or not. But I think he leaves a hole for Japan moving forward. They haven't really named a coach for them. I would have loved to have seen Eddie Jones return to Japan this year to coach his former side. I think that would be the Cinderella return of all time, for him to have beaten the Springboks, and the Miracle of Brighton, and then come back to coach that team. Do I think there's anybody on that staff currently that could do it? Not sure, actually. I would have thought Scott Hansen would have taken it. Unfortunately, he will be joining Razor Robertson at the All Blacks coaching staff. You have hopefully the options of the professor. You have Wayne Smith, Graham Henry possibly taking it. They have connections already in the top league, coaching Kobelco and Panasonic respectively. They could do it, but I think that will be the hottest coaching search now after this World Cup, next to South Africa. I mean, obviously, unless they fire Steve Borthwick and a couple other than boys up north, that could be an easy shuffle. In terms of teams up north that could get the sack, you really just have, I would think Steve Borthwick is on the hot seat, definitely. I've heard rumors that Gregor Townsend might leave Scotland. Maybe he is. I hope not. I haven't really dug into them yet. But between that and the USA problem, yeah, you have a lot of options out there. But that's going to be it for me this week. We'll see each other Friday. I'll definitely give my rapid reactions to that All Blacks match. I will be watching myself at O'Brien's. For all you LA people out there, come join us at the Santa Monica Rugby Club. We'll be showing out. It'll be a great game. It's at noon Pacific. Don't be late. Find parking. It's going to be a show to get out there. Have fun, guys. Peace.